These lessons are all about the capo, what it is, what it does, the different reasons for using it, and how to work out where to stick it when you do decide to use it. Now I can almost hear a fair number of you saying, hang on a minute, that's not a capo. That doesn't look anything like the capo I bought. So the first thing I want to do is take a look at a number of different types of capo and give you a little bit of a guided tour. Here's a close-up of the capo I use. It's made by Kyser and costs as little as $15 or so if you order one online. It's well designed, does everything you need a capo to do, and so far mine has lasted forever. So what do I mean when I say it does what I want it to do? Well, 5 things really. First, I want it to be very easy to put on, easy and quick. Secondly, I want it to apply exactly the right amount of pressure to the strings, evenly across all 6 strings. Now, if a capo doesn't apply enough pressure, you're going to get that kind of rattly, dead sound on some of the strings at least. If it applies too much pressure, it's a more subtle problem. You're going to get a slight, it's going to slightly put the string out of tune and make it sound a little bit brittle. That's perhaps a more subtle problem. I suppose really if the capo is too tight, the main problem is it's going to be hard to shift. So there's a kind of balance there. Thirdly, I want it to be easy to move quickly, even occasionally in the middle of playing a song. I want it to be very quick and easy to take off, again, occasionally even in the middle of playing a song. Here's one made by Dunlop. Basically operates the same as my Kyser one and costs around about the same as well. It's another good example of a capo that does everything you want it to and nothing that you don't want it to. Now this one is interesting. This is called the G7 Performance Capo. At around $44 it's considerably more expensive than the others. It claims to have 2 advantages over the ones we've looked at so far. Its pressure is adjustable in very small increments, and it takes up less room on the guitar neck and so never gets in the way of your fretting hand. Now personally, as I've never had an issue with either of these things, I don't really see the extra value. But there are those who swear by this capo, so my advice is, if you're rich enough, try it out. Now here's an example of the type of capo I would probably advise avoiding. The screw adjustment is there to help you fine-tune the pressure, something I've personally never found the need to do. In any case, this method of adjustment is just too fiddly and certainly prevents using the capo quickly and easily. Now, what if you're practically broke and would even find the $15 capo a stretch? My advice is not to be tempted to go for one of these. Or these. These type of designs are generally much cheaper, typically around $4, but awkward to use, not very effective, and tend not to last that long in my experience. You'd be almost better advised to opt for the instant homemade capo instead. This will cost you nothing and works almost as well. Don't make the mistake of getting a specialised capo at this stage. This is an example of a clever looking gadget that allows you to select individual strings for the capo to hold down. This sort of thing might be interesting to experiment with in addition to a standard capo, but for now the most important thing is to get hold of a simple standard capo. Finally, if you're picking up a capo from a second-hand source, do make sure it's a guitar capo. These are examples of banjo capos. Be warned, you might also bump into capos for mandolins, ukuleles and even lutes. So that's a brief introduction to the thing itself. But just why would you want to get hold of a capo in the first place? What exactly are they good for? Well, the first application that most guitar players find for a capo is to enable them to change the key of a song without having to change the chord shapes they're using. For example, supposing I've learnt the song Let It Be by the Beatles and I've learnt it in the original key of C. The first line would go something like this: C, G, A minor, F. Then perhaps I find myself accompanying a female vocalist who complains that the key of C is just too low for them to sing it in, and would I please play it in E flat instead? Now, to make sense of much of the rest of this lesson, I'm going to assume that you're already up to speed with understanding how the chromatic scale works. Here's a quick reminder of the notes of the ascending chromatic scale, and the descending chromatic scale. If all this suddenly looks like Greek to you, don't worry, but it's probably best to dive off and take a look at the lessons that explore the chromatic scale in detail before coming back and rejoining this lesson. So we want to use capo to instantly transpose a song from the key of C up to the key of E flat. Well, the note E flat is 3 semitones or 3 half steps higher than C on the chromatic scale. So we want to think in terms of raising the song 3 frets. So here's a note C, 3rd fret on the A string. So if we go C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, E flat. So another word for E flat is obviously D sharp. And you can see that that's just from C we go 1, 2, 3 frets up. So I fit my capo to the 3rd fret. So we got that number 3 from the gap between the note C and the note E flat on the chromatic scale. Once I've got the capo in place, I can simply play the chord C there, and we'll be hearing that as an E flat chord. Similarly, when I change to G, we're now hearing that as a B flat chord. A minor we're hearing as a C minor chord, and so on. The beauty of using the capo is that we don't even need to know the names of the chords we're now playing. The capo automatically transposes for us, so we just play the song exactly as if we were playing it in C major, and the capo does the work for us. some people ask me, why can't you just move the open chord up the fretboard anyway without using the capo? Which is actually quite a good question. Let's look a little closer at that. If I play C down here using the ordinary open C shape, we have to bear in mind that only 3 of the strings are actually being affected by my fingers on the fretting hand here. And when I move that shape up the fretboard, it's only those 3 strings that I'm altering. The others, the notes are effectively left behind back here at the nut. So when I'm playing that there, we've still got the open E sounding, the open G and the top E. And those notes keep mixing in with these notes. So you can hear some weird and wonderful sounds as we go up. So effectively what the capo does is bring the nut of the guitar up with us as we go. I'll put that across there. That's now moving the strings I've left behind with us. So you can hear that's a perfectly good, in this case, C sharp major chord, D major chord, E flat major chord, and so on. So the idea behind this particular use of the capo is simply just to be able to change the key without having to think about it, and without having to change chord shapes. And that is probably the primary reason why most people buy a capo in the first place, and the commonest reason for using one. But for the more advanced guitar player, there are also some more creative reasons why you might choose to use a capo. But as these generally require a higher level of understanding of guitar music theory, both to grasp and to fully use, we've decided to make these applications the subject of part 2 of this lesson. So if you just wanted to learn the basic approach to using the capo, then that's great. This lesson should have got you up and running with that. But if you're ready to take a more adventurous approach, please move on to part 2 of this lesson. But please be warned, if you've studied little or no guitar music theory, you will find part 2 of this lesson a bit heavy going. And my best advice would be to come back to it after working your way through both parts 1 and 2 of the Guitar Music Theory course, which you can find in the advanced section of this site. If you decide to skip part 2 of the capo lesson, then please rejoin me for the lesson on how to play All Along the Watchtower. And we'll get straight into using your shiny new capo for that. Okay, well, whichever option you choose, I look forward to seeing you in the next lesson.